Hi friends, it's Becky, and today is the last day in September in 2024. And so I'm going to be wrapping up my month-long challenge, beaded chain challenge that I've been doing by making a last beaded chain necklace. For the month of September, I have challenged myself to make at least 2 beaded chain necklaces a week. I've done that. And I have really enjoyed my challenge. It's such a great way, having a personal challenge, to get out of a rut if you're kind of stuck creatively or you need something to kind of push you to do more inspiration. So that's what I had originally come up with it for last year, and I wanted to do it again this year because it's such a great way to focus my creative energy on a specific type of thing, and to be able to look at my different bead boxes and figure out how to make beaded chains with all of them. And so I wanted to make one with the Curated Bead box for September, and this is a peek at the actual chain that I'll be making. I went ahead and made one side of the necklace first ahead of time so that we weren't here for 3 hours, although I know some of you enjoy that. But it's a lot of fun, and it's so great. So the Curated Bead box, when I opened it, I was immediately like inspired to make some earrings with it, and I wanted to make a necklace as well. And in fact, this is going to be a twofer, because in addition to the beaded chain necklace, I kept glancing at the box and looking at the beads and wanting to put some of the other beads together. So I'm also going to do a strung necklace. Let me go over the things that I'm going to be using while we're doing this. I'm making my chain with 18 gauge craft wire. I am doing simple loops, so I am using my new simple loop beaded chain hack, which is where I use a one-step looper for one side of the loop, and then for the other side of the loop I use my round nose pliers. It makes it go faster, and it makes it a little bit easier to get those chains created and put together, and I'll show you that hack when I demonstrate the 2 beaded links that I've made. I'm also using some chain nose pliers because they are incredibly useful for opening and closing things, wrapping things, bending things. They're the MVP of my jewelry table. I've got some flush cutters for cutting my wire, and when I do my stringing portion with these beads over here, I am going to be using a magical crimper because it is my favorite way to crimp. Alright, so that's the tools. The actual beads that I'm using are some of these beads that came in the designer mix in the Curated Bead box. We've got these long ovals, and you may have gotten different beads in your mix than I got. These were in mine. And then we have these faceted ovals that are two-toned. I'm using 2 of those. I have 4 of these shiny ovals. And then I'm going to make a focal using this round bead that has these, it's like a stardust thing, and then table cuts. It's such an interesting bead, and I'm excited to use that. And then something that I've kind of struggled with when I get these, the bead mixes, is that we have these offset, like diamondy shape ones, the ones that have a hole sort of through that part. But I have figured out a way to use these and a couple of bicones from that mix, and we're going to make a focal with these beads here, one of these metal beads, and a two-toned matte crackle glass bead from the box. So those are going to be my focals. The 2 links that I've made are using these two-tone crackle glass and one of these round metal beads, and then again one of these. So I'll make these links with y'all. When I start doing my stringing, I really wanted to use this gorgeous pendant, so I grabbed some of the beads that echo some of the colors on this. Like, we've got some greens and a little bit of oranges, not so many blues and purples in this box, but I picked out these orange beads, these green crackle glass beads. These were also in the box, and they are these two-tone like rainbow iris on one side. like, I don't know, they're football shape faceted beads. So they're also going to be part of this necklace. And then I just really love these great big filigree silver balls. So when I do my stringing, we're going to be using those beads for that. That's not going to be until after we do the beaded chain necklace. But also when I'm doing this one, I wanted to bring in one of these other colors. So I grabbed some purple beading wire. So that should be visible through these clear beads when it's strung on there. So that's what I grabbed for those. Inside the Curated Bead box, you always have a finding starter kit. So I've grabbed some lobster clasps and jump rings from that. And then I've got lobster clasp and jump rings for the second necklace. All right, so let's do our links. And I will be doing my wrap up. I usually do a wrap up on Sundays, but because it's so close to the end of the month, I decided to do my wrap up tomorrow on the 1st of October so that I can go over all of the necklaces that I've made for my challenge, as well as wrap up what I made last week. And I'll include this as well so that we can do a double whammy wrap up. So I like to work off the spool when I make my beaded chains. It helps minimize waste, so I can use more of my wire. So I'm just going to stack my beads for each of those links where I want them to be. And on this end, this is where I'm going to use my one-step looper. And the one-step looper, you put this in here and give it a little squeeze. And this part here will cut the end of your wire flush. It bends it around. And I like to give it a little bit of a bend back like that so that the loop is centered over this. It's not completely closed, but that's what pliers are for. And it makes it easy and simple to do that. Now for the second loop, I'm going to take my beads, push them up to that loop, and then just do a little bend along the top with my fingers. And then I'm going to measure along the side of my finger here. This is about 1 centimeter from the bend to the place that I'm going to be cutting it. You could also use a measuring tool to measure that, but I'm going to roll this up for my second loop using my round nose pliers. And that I can straighten these out. And that gives me a link that was quick and easy and fairly painless. I'll do the same with this one. Get my one-step looper out. Make sure I get a little bend. Push my bead up. Bend that over. Cut the wire off the spool. And roll this up. Where you going, buddy? And I think I might need to cut this a little bit shorter because I want this loop to be, these are fairly big holes in this, so I want my loop to be right up against the bead hole. Like that. All right, so that is how I make my links. And then to put it together, one of the reasons I like simple loops is because it gives you an easier construction. Because all you have to do is use your pliers and swing open that loop like you do a jump ring. and then connect it to the next link. Like this, and like that. So let's just put this bit together. I already did one side of the necklace. This is the other side. And then we'll make our focal using some more of that 18 gauge wire and these beads here. And when might you use a wrapped loop versus a simple loop? With 18 gauge wire, it's probably not going to pull apart very easily because it is a nice thick wire that holds its strength. So a simple loop is going to work just fine for that. If you want extra stability, you can use a wrapped link. I usually save my wrapped links for 20 or 22 gauge wire when I do that, but that's both sides. I'm going to set these aside and let's get zoomed in just a little bit. No, that's way too much. There we go. That's about right for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this one there. I've got these larger beads that are going to be sort of just a little sun ray underneath it, and then we'll have these two above it to connect it to the rest of the necklace. So let's get some wire out for this. Let's do about, it's sort of better to have more wire than you need. So let's get about 9 or 10 inches of this 18 gauge wire, and I'm running it through my fingers. It does two things. It warms up the wire to make it easier to work with, and it also straightens out any kinks in it. All right. Let's do, how about halfway through this wire, I'm going to do a little bend in it. And I'm just going to do that bend about halfway up like that. It makes kind of a V shape. Yeah, I like that. All right. Let's put this one on here. And this bit here, I'm going to bend down. And I'm going to start a little curve. I'm just moving my finger against it just to make kind of a gentle curve like that. And now I'm going to stack on these crystals. I'm going to put the large pointy guy on there, put on a bicone, another pointy guy, and then a bicone, and then another pointy guy, like that. And now I'm going to, as gently as possible, curve this up this way. All right, and now I need to do another bend right here. Somehow I'm gonna get this going the other way through here. So I started out with this bend here, I made a curve, and this part needs to go through my large bead. Again, it's got a really wide hole, so it can accommodate 2 passes of this 18 gauge wire through it. It could probably accommodate 3, but I'm not going to do 3. And this is going to be the awkward part, is trying to get this bit of wire all the way through in that other direction. All right. Oof. And that is not very round, is it? Need to tighten that up a little bit, like that. Maybe that one too. All right, I'm going up. There we go. All right, the long part, I'm gonna just curve around the top of this bead like that. Curve that one around too, and right where they intersect, I'm gonna bend the longer part up. Gonna pinch everything and just wrap this around. Doesn't need to be a lot of wrapping, just doing twice there. Now I can cut off my excess. And this doesn't need to be neat because this hole on this bead is really big and it will just cover up that entire wrap right there at the top. Let me put this guy on here like that and make myself a loop at the top of this. I'm going to turn it to the side, bend that away over the top of my pliers. That leaves me some room down there between the bead and where my loop will be, so that when I wrap it, because I am going to be wrapping it, let's make it kind of a larger loop. So if you move further towards your handle on round nose pliers, you get a larger loop. So I'm just scooching this down to about there. And again, I'm using my finger, I'm pushing it around the top. I'm gonna open my pliers up and rotate them up here so I can continue all the way around. So you get that little cross section there. And I'm gonna hold this with my pliers. You can use another set of pliers. I'm using my fingers to push this around. There we go. Sometimes you can make a really fun focal just with some wire and beads. All right, let's scooch back and put this all together. Now these 2 strands are the same whether they're from one end or the other, so I don't have to pay too much attention to which end I'm attaching to my focal. The other day when I was making one of them, I put the wrong end of one of my chains onto my focal, and so my necklace ended up a little bit asymmetrical, and I didn't notice until someone pointed it out very helpfully. I appreciate when my friends let me know that I've missed something. All right. So once we've got that attached here, I'm just attaching both chains to that same loop that I made on my focal. Oof, yes. All right, I'm just gonna double check the length real quick. There we go, that's gonna be perfect. Let's add some jump rings and lobster clasps to the end. All right, opening and closing jump rings. This is a fun part. I always test the lobster clasps to make sure they work before I attach them. There we go. To open and close jump rings, you want to hold one end steady and then just twist it open like that. Don't pull them open and then push them back together. They never go back together right when you do that. Then hold that other end and twist the ends together. Sometimes you have to adjust it a little bit to make sure that they stay. That is fine. Open, attach it to that thing and the second thing that you want it to connect to. Which in this case is the, there we go. That is the very last of this year's beaded chain challenge necklaces. I love that. And now let's do some stringing because I love doing stringing. All right, let's figure out our pattern and how we want to go. Is this going to be, maybe I will have myself a little vocal part like that. Grab some wire real quick. Here we go. This will work. I was just going to do a jump ring through this loop, but I think tying some of these beads that we're going to be having with the rest of it to this is going to work better for cohesiveness. So I've got some 22 gauge wire. Let's do wrapped loops for this one. Going to pop this filigree metal bead on the wire. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. There we go. This crystal football shape. And my orange drizzle bead. And then about 2 inches down from the end, 2.5 maybe, I'm going to make a little bend in my wire, grab my round nose pliers. Just like I did with the other one, I'm going to make a loop. This loop is going to be smaller though, so I'm doing it closer to the tip of my round nose pliers. It's the same thing where you rotate it away so it goes all the way around. Then hold on to the loop. We push the wire around the neck. I'm just going to do about 3 wraps. 1, 2, 3. And this is why I leave it on the spool, again for less wastage. Now that I have these up here, I will cut off about 3 fingers width from the bottom of this bead for my second wrap. And for my second wrap, I want to attach it to my leaf before I wrap it. So I'm going to hold on to my wire with my pliers, bend my wire over the top of it, so that there's room between the bead and where the loop is for wrapping. Going to make my loop, and before I wrap it, I'm going to put this leaf right on there and attach it. And now I can wrap this wire around the stem of that. Yeah, let's keep going all the way to the back. There's a little bit of a rough bit right there from the wire, so I'm going to tuck that in. Just give a little smush with my chain nose pliers. All right, so now that is going to be the center of my necklace, and I think I'm going to want to put this guy here. I've got tons of these silver beads, and then maybe we'll do this one. Orange, silver, this, and these green crackle glass beads are so pretty. All right, and now I'm just going to, for the rest of this, just alternate the silver bead and the green bead, and then the orange bead, and then the silver bead, until it is long enough. I'll do the same thing on the other side. I do like to lay out my beads a little bit so I know how they're going to go before I start stringing. Sometimes I string with abandon, just absolutely chaotic about it, but not all the time. And if I leave this on the spool when I'm stringing, then I can adjust the length as I need to. And since I've got so many of these other beads still, I can make it as long or as short as I want it to be. Silver. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just checking that it's going to be the same length. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah, that feels like it's a pretty good balance for me. All right, let's just start on this end and start stringing. So Curated Bead Box is one of the more affordable bead subscriptions out there. Usually you get some glass beads, some finding starter kit. It's a really good intro kit to beading for more experienced beaders. It's a good stash builder so that you get a whole variety of round beads. And sometimes you get some cool shapes like this with the faceted beads. Oh, and it is curated to a theme. The Finding Starter Kit, again, makes it a really good value. I'll put links in the description to my unboxing of this box, and also to the Curated Bead Box site if you are interested in subscribing. I do have a coupon code, which will again be in the description, that you can use to get some money off of your first box. also put a link to the playlist I've created with all of my beaded chain challenge videos so that you can see some of the other beaded chain necklaces that I've made. And tomorrow on the 1st of October, I will be uploading a video with both my weekly wrap-up of the things that I made last week and also a recap of all of the beaded chain necklaces that I made this month. Because it was a special month. It was a challenge month, so there's going to be extra stuff to talk about. Oop. There it is. I think these filigree beads are a little bit hard to string because they're so lightweight and hollow that you've got to really angle your wire the right way to get it through that opposite hole. That's the thing I'm struggling with right now. But there we go. You can see that purple wire through that crystal on there. So I get a little teeny pop of that purple color that is there in this. It's a good reason to use colored wire. Come on, buddy. If I start on that end. There we go. Now I string this guy on. Just gonna double check my length. You know, that might just be long enough. Just might be long enough. Two necklace designs for the price of one. You know, I think I really like this doing more than one project at a time thing. Sometimes I don't have time for that though, and I need to just do what I can. Why are you being so awkward? There we go, buddy. You did it. I'm very proud of you. It's so glittery. Look how it sparkles. I think sparkle is my favorite. Good, good. Sorry about this, guys. This is, sometimes I cut out the struggle bits so that we can just get through it. Sometimes I feel like it's helpful to leave in the parts where I struggle so that if you're struggling with the same thing, you don't feel bad. You're like, no, this is a normal thing. It is a difficult thing to get these wires through both holes on this bead. And if you're having trouble with it, just stick with it. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with this. Maybe curse a little. It's fine. Nobody's listening. Go. One more. I don't know if you guys ever have it where you're just like, why am I so bad at this when things just aren't working right for you? And very often it's not that you're bad at it, it's that things are difficult. And it's okay for things to be difficult and to feel some sort of frustration about them. Oof. There we go, yes. For a minute there I was like, is it the same length on both sides? I love this so much right now. I am so happy that my little idea has worked out for that necklace. I'm just double checking my length. Nope, I need another repeat on either end. So let's add another little section of beads with more. I've got more, so I can. Let's add these guys. 2 more. They're like little Death Stars. That's what they are. My little Death Stars. All right. Let's check this out. I'm just holding it up to my neck, by the way, to make sure that it's going to be long enough to be able to clasp. Okay, so that is great on that side. I'm going to need to add another section on that side, but first I'm going to crimp this end of my wire so that I can cut this and add those and do the crimp on that side. So let me grab my crimps. There we go. And I'm just going to crimp a loop. I am going to attach a jump ring to it after I do the crimp. Just putting the crimp on the wire. Bend that back. Like that. To make a loop. All right. Now, one of the reasons I like using the magical crimper is because then I don't have to use a crimp cover, because it has this concavity on there and it's going to make this square shaped, you know, sharp edged crimp into a nice smooth ball of crimp. What I want to do is center my crimp in that concavity, and this works with 2x2 crimp tubes, 2mm by 2mm, and it works best on this medium size wire. This is 0.019 inch, and you do a squeeze and it pinches down the corners of your crimp, and then you turn it at 90-degree angle and give it another squeeze, and you just go around it and just do all of these little squeezes, and it smooths out all of those edges, the rough edges. It's very secure. This is why I like doing it. It does have a learning curve, but it is my favorite way of doing crimps. And that is why, because now I can just have that on there and it doesn't need a crimp cover. So I'm gonna just cut this here so that I've got enough room to string that little extra bit of beads on there to match this side and to have enough to crimp. And the wire that I'm using, it's the soft flex wire. It has a very durable coating, so I don't usually use wire guardians with this beading wire. It's very supple and bendy, so when it's curved like this, it's not going to get brittle and break, which is one of the reasons you might want to use it. You know what? I need to put those beads on first. I heard you yelling at me saying, Becky, don't forget the beads. I heard you. Thank you. I appreciate you looking out for me. Let's get my little Death Stars on here. Now that I called them Death Stars, that's all I can see. And one more. Yeah, so I don't use the wire guardians with this wire. I just find that I don't need to. I am going to put this directly on to the wire with my clasp. I don't need to do a, what is it called? The thing, a jump ring for this end. In fact, I probably don't need to do a jump ring for this. Very often I've just left a little loop for the lobster clasp to attach to, but I'm gonna put one on for this. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to crimp on this side as well. Now that I've got a loop, I don't like my necklaces to be too tight, so I like to put a little curve in it before I crimp it. It takes up slack so that when I'm done crimping it, I'll uncurve it and it'll have a little more drape than it would if it was too tight. I'm just doing a little wiggle to make sure that I've got space between the side of my crimper and this bead so that it can get centered correctly. Sometimes I'll use my fingernail to create that space. Sometimes I can just do a little wiggle and it works just fine. There we go. All right, so that is our curated bead box twofer. We have a strung necklace and we have a beaded chain necklace. And the really fun thing about this box was that they gave us 2 different metal colors to play around with, which makes it extra fun. Anyway, again, I will have all of those links in the description below, and you can join me tomorrow for my wrap up where I will try these on and you'll be able to see what they look like on a person instead of on my beading mat. I hope you're having a fantastic day and happy beading. Bye!